Hello, everybody. I hope you have found your seats, and it's time to start. Welcome on behalf of the whole Central Baltic team to be here at Central Baltic Annual Event. We are very glad to see you here today. We hope you will enjoy the day, that you will find something interesting for yourself. And we also are very glad to have this great opportunity to stream this event online for people who could not be here today. My name is Kersti Karu, and I work as the Communication Officer of the Central Baltic Program's Joint Secretariat. Today, we have planned something interesting, inspiring, and hopefully something that will send you back home, not with questions, but answers. First of all, I would like to thank my colleagues, Islande Hotel staff, and last but not least, all the speakers that are here today with us and make this event possible. Why we are here today? Well, for many reasons. First of all, when we were planning this event, we thought that it should have something nice to inspire you, something positive about it, but also give a bigger picture and take you step by step to these small details that actually make a difference and bring the results. So the first reason why we're here today is to celebrate the Interreg cooperation 25th anniversary. What Interreg has done in 25 years, what are the top achievements, we will hear more about that. Second reason is to actually open the logic behind all these bigger strategies and how they are put into regional context. We will also learn more about that during the whole day. What we were also thinking was that, but when we speak about bigger strategies and create this big framework, we should give some concrete examples of what these things are, what has happened, what good has come out of that. We are very glad to have many examples here today, and not only during the sessions, but also during the breaks. Not all events offer, I believe, opportunity to learn from each other. And that is something why you should stay until the end of the event. It will get more practical, step by step. It will nicely lead us to where we want to be at the end of the day. And maybe you can also say that last but not least, to learn more about yourself. And not only as a person, but only as a partner, as a project partner, as a cooperation partner, as a project leader, manager, anything that you see yourself in today. And this takes us nicely to the agenda. The day has been divided into two bigger blocks. The first block is all about the cross-border cooperation, which you can see more details in your folders from the agenda. But this is something that will create this nicer big framework that I was talking about before. The second part of the day, after lunch, will be more practical, focusing on partnership and tools. And this is the place where we have planned most concrete examples with speaking with their own voice, and this is the place where you can activate yourself to try out different things and to learn about each other. You have all gotten these folders today, and what you can find in the folders, in addition to the agenda and list of participants, is this brochure about the Central Baltic program. It will give you a brief overview of what the program is about, main aims, and what does it want to achieve. In addition to that, there is a very fresh out of the printer brochure about KEEP. Has any one of you heard what is KEEP? Quite many have already, but those who haven't, it's an online database for territorial cooperation projects. So this is a very good tool. Make sure that you try this out, and it can be really an inspiring thing. It's not only a database where you can find information, but it's presented in a very nice way. Another topic that you will hear about today is the EUSBSR, European Strategy for the Baltic Sea region. This brochure also nicely gives you a brief overview of the main things in the strategy. But as it's a big one and a complex one, we will be hearing more about this today. We hope that this folder nicely wraps up this morning part that we have planned to guide you to the practical tools. As for the presentations, they will be uploaded on our website shortly after the event, together with the recording. And we urge you to look at the slides when you want to go back to them, together with the recording, because not all information is on the slides, luckily. We welcome questions from you. As I said, we really want you to go home with answers and not questions. So whenever you feel that you have something to ask, we have reserved time after presentations to do so. Just give me a sign and we will come to you. And we have not forgotten our online audience. They have also an opportunity to comment and ask questions via the chat box next to the streaming. Now we will start any minute and break for coffee at 10:45. Then the streaming will be put on pause, but we will not keep you in silence. We have also something for you to see there. And we welcome you back then after the coffee break at 11:10. I wish you a really, really interesting day, and thank you so much for being with us here today. We are very lucky to have such an interest towards the program and towards what we do. That's why we feel that our job is an important one. And I think now it's time to say the last words from my side, that whenever you feel that you need to do something with your phone, we have Wi-Fi here, or you have your internet connection, so make sure that you find us in social media, either in Twitter or in Facebook, and not only today, but just to keep up with what we do, share with us, comment, and so on. So let's get going, and it's time to head to our first presentation, which will be about Interreg, cross-border cooperation. And the presentation will be given by Agnès Monfret, who is the head of Unit European Cross-Border Cooperation at the European Commission. So welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. So thank you very much. Thank you for inviting us today, and we hope we can contribute some way towards this bigger picture, providing this bigger picture that you are after. So starting maybe with why we're here, why Interreg after all. So it's European territorial cooperation that we often know as Interreg, and the rebranding I will talk about in a few moments. Why Interreg, after all? Have you ever thought about this? Even at the Commission, it's not so. The answer is not so obvious. It's still to be It's still in discussion. But originally, really originally, it came in the early 90s when we were preparing the internal market. And it was thought at the time, this was the assumption, that with the internal market, all the growth and the economy would focus in the centers, forgetting about the borders that were seen as handicapped region. So it was a kind of entitlement policy to start with. Because you were border areas, you need extra help for compensation, because the internal market would go against those regions. That's quite interesting, and this is how the first community initiative, it was not a regulation, it was an own initiative of the Commission, started back 25 years ago, because as Kirsty said, we are celebrating the 25th anniversary this year, precisely for those supposedly less well-to-do areas. But in reality, it's turned out, paradoxically even, to be a laboratory of an ever more integrated internal market at the borders, because it's really at the borders that you experience Europe, that you experience European integration, and that you go further. These are little laboratories in the border. So the historic perspective, again, starting from the little baby to the young adults that we are now at 25 years, was that it indeed started as a pure community initiative for a few years. We had only 11 member states at the time. Then gradually we expanded to the 28 that we are now. In 2000, we had, for the first time, a full recognition in a basic act, a piece of the legislative body, Parliament and Council, giving us the mandate to do what we were anyway already doing, namely cooperation, as one of the numerous goals of cohesion policy, which is the Robin Hood policy of the EU. And since last year, really, since 2014, we are goal number 2 of cohesion. The mainstream being cohesion as such via national envelopes to boost the less developed regions, but then the border regions and the bigger areas, transnational areas, have this second goal of European territorial cooperation at large. So what do we have for this programming period? Because you may know we work by programming periods, bigger envelopes for 7 years, since the Paquet de l'Or in the late 80s. We are again, goal number 2, against investment for growth and jobs, we have the European Territorial Cooperation known as Interreg. We have over 100 programs throughout Europe. That's a lot. And comparatively little money, but still a lot of money, 10 billion. If you think about maritime policy, they're very envious of what we have just for territorial cooperation. But it's true, it's less than 3% of cohesion policy as a whole, which is above 350 billion for the 7 years ahead. And we have 60 cross-border cooperation programs, of which Central Baltic is one, of which South Baltic is another one. Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, represented today, are also 3 others. We have 15 transnational programs, 4 interregional programs, of which Interact is part, and there will be colleagues from Interact intervening today to facilitate the process. And we also have cooperation at the external borders of the EU with accession countries and the neighborhood. So 12 Interreg EPA, EPA meaning Instrument for Pre-Accession, and ENI, European Neighborhood Instrument. So these are the external borders, where we contribute via cohesion, the cohesion policy up to 50%. So 60 cross-border cooperation program for over 6.6 billion for the 7 years ahead. This is the budget side. In terms of what we may do or not do, or have to do, there is obviously the legislative toolbox, loads of regulation. I have them, which makes my bag very heavy with me, should you want to check something. These are the nitty-gritties, because we get the mandate to do something, but we get the mandate to do it in one way and not in another. This is what Parliament and councils have set as the goals and the ways to spend the money. We had the 22nd of September as the deadline for the partners in each program area to submit their strategy for the 7 to 9 years ahead. By and large, this has been respected. And we also have, and this has taken a lot of time, above 2.5 years of negotiation to just let the member states, because Interreg has not been conceived with one budget for each program. We've given, still in 1420, each member state an envelope for them to decide how they would apportion, how they would distribute the Interreg money to their different borders. But originally, it's based on population, but it was still to the member states to agree where they would put them. And this has meant a lot of discussion and negotiation. Hence, the relatively less than a year ago, the agreement on the amounts per program and the exact program area eligible. More importantly, what are we after for 1420? We want to be strategic. The budget is limited. We need to concentrate and focus on results. And the title of today, Going for Concrete Results, is perfectly matching what we want to do. One important thing that goes without saying, probably more for your area than others, is that we have a paramount principle in this programming period, which is the partnership and multi-governance principle. In brief, we want all public authorities, relevant economic and social partners, civil society, NGOs in each specific sector to be potentially and hopefully de facto really associated to the process, the programming and the implementation of the projects. And the concentration is already very well defined. It's the EU 2020 goals of a smart, sustainable and inclusive growth. This is what we want for Europe 2020. And this translates into 11 thematic objectives. The smart being research and innovation, information and communication technologies. Second, SMEs, small and medium enterprises, low carbon economy. The sustainable part being climate change, combating, adjusting to climate change, environment and resource efficiency, sustainable transport, and the inclusive growth that we want, focusing on employment, employability of people, mobility, social inclusion, education training, and most importantly for cooperation, I would say, administrative capacity, better administration. We have a specific investment priority for Interreg, which is making the institutions and the people work together. That's the essence of Interreg, and this is recognized as such. Compared to the wider bulk of cohesion, we have a few differences. Some of you may be familiar with the more national envelopes, which we call country-specific. We have the same result orientation. We have the same performance framework, meaning we want to define ex ante what we want to do, the outputs we expect to have, and the results we are after. The only difference we have is that we have this goal, this target, and potentially the stick if we don't meet the outputs, but we do not have the little carrot of the performance reserve at mid-program. That's the only slight difference. But probably we believe in what we do, so we don't need this extra carrot. We have, as I said, this thematic concentration along the 11 that I've just showed, plus we have our specific, what we call in a jargon TO11, thematic objective 11, this dialogue between institution and citizen, which is part of the administrative capacity building. What is new in the 1420 programming period for the rest of Cohesion are the ex ante conditionalities. Like whatever they do, they need to have a plan, they need to fit into the circumstances in each country. This is not applicable to us, largely because everything is national and we do not have this framework so far at cross-country level. Like we do not have the statistics at cross-country level, by the way. And the thematic objectives with this one that is very specific to us. Now coming back to this area, the Baltic region. So Interreg 5A, A being the first strand of Interreg, the cross-border cooperation programs. Where do you stand vis-à-vis the rest of the 60 programs? This was the status as of the 12th of May, but it has remained the same today. 18 programs so far have been adopted. These are those in green. I hope they appear in green on the map. Central Baltic is one of them. It's been adopted in December last year. We have the 37 that are still being negotiating. This is the case of South Baltic, which we expect to be resubmitted soon after the observation we sent in March. Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, which have recently been resubmitted after the observation the Commission sent. So those two should be adopted shortly. And 5, which appear in red on the map, are still expected. They've not been submitted yet for different reasons. In any case, all programs now should be adopted this year. This is very important because we've already wasted, not totally, but largely the 14 installment for those that have not been adopted, either in late 14 or early 15. We've had to go back to Parliament and Council, especially Council, by unanimity, had to modify the multi-annual financial framework 1420. This was not a piece of cake, I can assure you. It was foreseen, so it was relatively automatic in theory. And we were lucky that a few big member states were late too, so they had an interest in voting this transfer of the 14 installment into 15, meaning we don't waste it. But it's not foreseen that we have yet another revision of the multi-annual financial framework should we fail to use the 15 installment. So we really need to make sure that we use 14 and 15 this year. Now, coming to the 4 programs represented today, these are the amounts that are available. So some 122 million for Central Baltic. So for the cooperation of Finland, Estonia, Latvia, Sweden together. Some 30 million for South Baltic, some 55 million for Latvia, Lithuania, and 38 million for Estonia, Latvia. So all in all, for this region, which is not negligible in times of scarcity of public investment, some 300 million for the period 1420. The thematic concentration that is the preferred concentration of Interreg programs submitted so far is, whoops, I'm sorry, you can't see it very well, can you? Oh yes, here you, probably because I'm aside. TO6, so thematic objective 6, which represent environment and resource efficiency, comes on the top of the list for all programs. Not surprisingly, but it's very obvious, and it was not so obvious before. Research and innovation comes second in the top 3, and as you would expect, as I said, for cooperation, administrative capacity, making institutions and citizens work together, come third. How does your program or the 4 that are represented today compare with this? We find again the smart growth thematic with support to SMEs, small and medium enterprises. As far as sustainable growth is concerned, these are the highest scores for tier 6 and 7. So again, environment, resource efficiency, and sustainable transport, also important in the area. And these are the main two, actually. And then the inclusive growth with employment mobility, social inclusion, education, and our dear TO11, so administrative capacity. This is the same, these are the same figures, just split by program. So there you see that Central Baltic is heavily concentrated on sustainable growth, environment, resource efficiency, and sustainable transport. On the right, South Baltic is heavily concentrated. I mean, it's very obvious. It's above 50% on environment and resource efficiency. Latvia, Lithuania is more focusing on inclusive growth with employment mobility, but still environment and resource efficiency. And Estonia, Latvia, very much a very clear focus on SMEs, employment and mobility. But I mean, this shouldn't come as a surprise after what we've heard of the macro-regional strategy for the Baltic. These are the three pillars, as you may well know, of the strategy, namely connecting the region. Maybe now it's largely done, hence less focus on sustainable transport, but save the sea and increase prosperity in the region. So that matches really nicely with what's ahead and what we want for the region. For Central Baltic itself, as you can see in the little brochure that Kirsty mentioned before, the 4 priorities are competitive economy, sustainable use of common resources, well-connected region, still very present, and skilled and socially inclusive regions. What is really nice is, of course, what we want, which is the ex-ante definition of where we want to be in 7 to 9 years. Which concrete results do we want to have reached by then? And these are only a few examples that we've taken out of the program, as adopted in December. I would just quote one. We want an increase in visitors. We want 120,000 more visitors to support its sites. So we don't want just to invest in cultural and natural sites. We want it for a very specific purpose. We want to increase visitors, and we've even put targets, measurable targets to that. And we want to judge ourselves on whether we've been able to perform those targets vis-a-vis the citizen, because after all, this is public money. So we need value for money. And we want to invest with a purpose. If we get more visitors, we'll get more growth, we'll make more jobs in this sector. That's just to take an example of concrete results. Now, should we do more for border regions? Well, as we will be celebrating the 25th anniversary this year, especially in September, but the initiative dates back from July 19th, official journal in August, we celebrated in September centrally. We think, and we've had a look at the indicators, and we've tried to come with a narrative that is encompassing the 28 member states. Not all 28 were member states at the start of Interreg. And what we've seen is that by and large, we have collectively achieved in different stages 5 things. First, there is the big block, stepping stone, which is trust. If there is no trust, there is no cooperation. If people don't trust each other, they don't cooperate. That's as simple as that. And I'll take one example taken from the Estonia-Latvia program. It's the dictionary. I was talking to my Deputy Director General the other day. And he didn't even know this dictionary existed because he said, well, we don't speak Latvian, and the Latvian don't speak Estonian. He's come from Estonia. Oh, there would be a dictionary. I said, yes, and Interreg even supported it. There was one dating back from 1959, I think, or 61. It's different versions I read. And we are having one for common nowadays language. So just that people know each other, can talk to each other is very meaningful. So that's my little star here for trust, to make it relevant to the people in the room today. Then the second building block is connection between the people. If people don't cross the border, if there is no crossing point, for instance, then there is no cooperation. Just to get one example, I thought we could mention Interface, which is a project from the South Baltic. The slogan for it was "Walk the Baltic, take the ferry," and I think that summarizes nicely. But it was for foot passenger transportation across the Baltic. Health, I thought we could quote the Virtu project, which is a project from the Central Baltic for elderly people in the Baltic islands, the archipelagos, to enable the elderly to stay at home rather than be transported somewhere else where they are totally, they know no one, with ICTs, in information technologies. And this has been a very good laboratory, has been a little pioneer that can be exported on other borders, associating university from Turku and development center in Estonia, etc. And very positive feedback from the people, the elderly people who have benefited from it. Then we thought Interreg, over 25 years, not only has it built trust, has it built connection between people, has it built a healthy environment, but also a safe and more secure environment. And we have loads of projects on risk management, flooding, firefighters, crossing the borders to help each other. And I thought for today, what a good example that could be to mention the MIMIC project, again financed by the Central Baltic program, which is a MIMIC stands, I think, for minimizing risk of maritime oil transportation. And just coming from Brussels yesterday night, I saw all those big boats transporting oil, and I thought, well, that's indeed in line with what I'm going to say tomorrow. There is a risk which is pretty obvious in the area of oil spillage, and there has been modeling together, and I think it's also a flagship project of the macro-regional strategy for the Baltic Sea. Together, we can anticipate better risk and do better risk prevention together rather than apart. And finally, when all this is secured, and it's not necessarily in this order, it may be in a different order, then you go for growth and jobs. And one example out of many could be the Central Baltic Job Ferry, which is a kind of online forum, online platform for job seekers, job opportunities from Latvia, Estonia, Finland, and Sweden. Not just for the youth, mobile school graduates, they are supposedly more mobile than the more elderly population, but also workers and the HR experts. Recognition of diplomas, education paths, etc. So for us, 25 years, if we had to summarize it in a nutshell, that would be that little cake, birthday cake of the 25th anniversary. And we could illustrate it on all borders because by and large, that summarizes what we've been up to together on each border. But it's not the end of the day. There are still some challenges. We're not there yet. Despite 25 years of Interreg, we fully know borders still exist as obstacles. What can we do for it? Well, next September we will launch a public consultation to examine what is still at stake and engage into a general public. We will have a few concrete steps. We have already launched a study or are in the process of launching it. We will have a public consultation open for 3 months online, but we will have to find relays, and we will come in the regions to spread the word and hopefully get as much feedback as possible, feedback on problems, but also feedback on solutions, because some of the solutions that some of you have found may be exported on other borders. And then come with a potential solutions and, or at least who could do what towards the end of 16. But in the meantime, we fully agree it's time to celebrate, not always go for the perfection, but already rejoice in what we've achieved. This we will do centrally in September under the Luxembourg presidency in Belval, so it's not in Luxembourg city itself, it's at the border, on a site that has been renovated with Cohesion funds actually, and there will be the decentralized European Cooperation Days around the 21st of September, and there Interreg has been very active in trying to get the programs on board with a number of activities. First, a competition has been opened for a project slam, so each program is invited to present what it considers its best project ever, and have it hopefully being one of the 5 shortlisted to show it on stage in September and be elected as the best project ever so far. We have also an Interreg slogan contest, because so far we have a brand with this nice Interreg, recently rebranded, but we don't have a slogan. And finally, programs are invited to send posters also to Luxembourg for everyone to see. So it's a nice opportunity today to not just look towards the future, but look to the past for inspiration, as Kersi said, and we encourage you to come with even more concrete results in the future. In the slides, you will get all the links to our main websites, but more importantly, I think, are the questions that you could have today. I think we still have some time for questions. Yeah.
Any questions, or are we just warming up right now and waking up? And if there is something, anything in your mind, then feel free to ask. If not, at this point, thank you, Agnès, for the presentation, for this nice nice introduction and good overview of what has been done and what are the new challenges ahead. And Agnès also mentioned something about flagship projects, and this is something that nicely links with the next presentation with the EUSBSR. And I think it's time to continue with our next speaker, who is Baiba Liepa, and she's the project manager to support the implementation of the EU strategy for the Baltic Sea region. Quite a title you have. So the stage is yours, and let's continue.
Thank you. Labrīt, dāmas un kungi. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's my great pleasure to be here today. It's always double difficult to be in Latvia and to present something to the audience where most of you are from Latvia. It's always the most challenging. So I come from Interact program. I work there since 2010. Yeah, maybe some slide. And I work there with the EU strategy for the Baltic Sea region. And since late last year, when we are also programming Interact 3 program, which is one of interregional cooperation programs, we are also talking about exchanging between macro-regional strategies, because you may have heard it's not only one macro-regional strategy in Europe. There are 4 of those. So Interact also in the future will be supporting exchanges across macro-regional strategies. My presentation is based on 3 questions that I will try to answer. First of all, what is the EU strategy for the Baltic Sea region, or EUSBSR as we say? How the Baltic Sea strategy is implemented, and what is the role of cross-border cooperation projects. But before we move forward about the EUSBSR, I would like to ask you to raise your hands and to let me know what do you know about the Baltic Sea strategy. So there are 3 simple questions. First of all, how many of you have heard about the Baltic Sea strategy? Great. I can go home. Then how many of you would say that you are familiar with governance and structure of the content of the Baltic Sea strategy? A bit less. And how many of you have been implementing flagships within the Baltic Sea strategy? One. Okay, Sanna, nice to see you here. If I'm not mistaken, there is none of policy area coordinators or horizontal action leaders, at least according to the list of participants. Or if there is any, please raise your hand. No one. Let's start with this. What is the EU strategy for the Baltic Sea region? Although it's said it is complex, I think it's not really. It is maybe about how we understand it, how do we perceive the strategy. The Baltic Sea strategy, as already mentioned, is the first macro-regional strategy in EU. There are other 3. The Danube strategy was adopted in 2010, Adriatic-Ionian strategy in 2014, and the last one is coming now, soon. By mid-2015 should be presented to the European Council. The Baltic Sea strategy was endorsed by European Council already in 2009, so quite some time ago. What is the Baltic Sea strategy about? It is about cooperation. It is about strategic alignment. It is about coordination between different activities happening already on the ground. It's nothing new, this is what I would say. It is a framework where we see what is happening on the ground, where we see where cooperation is maybe too much, where cooperation is lacking, and we try to streamline and strategically think how we can do things together for our own benefit. It's not for somebody else, it's for ourselves. Baltic Sea strategy is also addressing common challenges. It's not about whatever, although it seems so if you see the long list of policy areas and horizontal actions that I will show you just shortly. The Baltic Sea strategy is about certain areas, certain priorities, certain challenges. It was built on to face environmental challenges of the Baltic Sea, and then it expanded also to other fields that I will show very, very shortly to you. The Baltic Sea strategy explicitly asks for cooperation and coordination, and these are 2 terms you will hear or all over, you will read all over. It asks for cooperation not only between member states, but also member states and non-EU member states, and we have Russia, Belarus here, Norway as well. Iceland is also counted because of Nordic cooperation. It also asks for coordination between institutions, between projects, between different ideas. The Baltic Sea strategy, although it was endorsed by European Council, so has kind of quite high political support, constantly asks for member states to be active and to remind and to put it back on the agenda at national level as well. If you think about the strategic framework for 2014-2020, then Baltic Sea strategy is placed just under the EU 2020 strategy, and it is kind of more territorially located, if I may say so. The Baltic Sea strategy is built upon 3 key principles. One being no new legislation, another one, no new institutions, no new funding. What does it mean? It means that we have enough institutions, we have enough legislative acts, regulations, laws, we have enough funds. For example, for 2007-2013, in a field of innovation in the Baltic Sea region, 120 funds were identified. I think we cannot complain about lack of funding. And these 3 no's are actually turned into 3 yeses, if I can say so. So it asks, the Baltic Sea strategy asks for closer coordination, for better and stronger cooperation, and for strategic alignment. Here is the structure of the Baltic Sea strategy. And I have to say that currently Baltic Sea strategy is going through its 2nd revision process. The first one, the strategy was endorsed in 2009. The first review was done in 2013, and you can still see the action plan available on the Baltic Sea Strategy's website. And now the new revision process is happening under chairmanship of Latvia in the National Coordinators Group. And the new version of the action plan should be endorsed early June. The Baltic Sea strategy, as also in the brochure, as also mentioned by previous speaker, is built upon 3 objectives: save the sea, connect the region, and increase prosperity. And then there are 13, now in the new version of the action plan, there will be 13 policy areas that we, all 8 member states, have agreed upon. So we know that in our region, it is very important to reduce hazardous substances inputs into the sea. We know very well that there is something to do about transport and energy. We know very well that a lot can be done still in the field of education and innovation. So there are these new 13 policy areas. And then there are 4 horizontal actions, meaning that these are also strategic directions, but they are equally relevant and important in any other of policy areas mentioned, like capacity building, which is just there, the second from the right side for you. So to have a good capacity to improve knowledge, it's also important in any of the policy areas. Descriptions of policy areas and horizontal actions are available in the action plan of the Baltic Sea strategy. Governance structure, how the Baltic Sea strategy is implemented. It seems complicated, but actually what is important to know, it is Council who endorsed the strategy. It is high-level group represented by all 28 member states who advises the Commission on development, on implementation of all macro-regional strategies. This high-level group is not established for Baltic, it is for all macro-regional strategies. It is also important to mention that national coordinators, just up there, under member states, these are people, usually foreign ministries, in Latvia it's Latvian Foreign Ministry, or Prime Minister Office in Sweden, who ensures coordination of macro-regional ideas within the country, with line ministries, with agencies, with institutions. Policy area coordinators and horizontal action coordinators are the one most important for project people. Because policy area coordinator is the one who represents and coordinates certain field across all 8 member states of the region. So policy area coordinator is the one that if you wish to develop flagship, that's the person, the institution to go and to talk with and to discuss if your idea would be of interest of the whole macro region or at least of few member states in the macro region. And then the Baltic Sea strategy, what I will talk just in the next slide, is implemented through flagships, meaning projects and processes. Then, about the implementation. As mentioned just now, the Baltic Sea strategy is implemented through flagships, being projects or processes. Projects, Mimic was just mentioned as one of the flagships supported by Central Baltic, and it was already finalized in December 2013. And we have, why the project is so important is, first of all, we need to react on the risks if something happens. We have such a small sea, such a shallow sea, that we really need to take very good care of it. But I will not go into details reminding you about the objective of the project. The other project that I mentioned as example is Cohiba project, and it is about control of hazardous substances in the Baltic Sea region. It was supported by Interreg Baltic Sea region program, the only transnational program we have here in our region, and it was finalized early 2012. What is interesting about this project, it is that project looked into 11 groups of hazardous substances to learn more about those, and then went back to HELCOM they developed recommendations on how to reduce inputs of these 11 groups of hazardous substances into the Baltic Sea. If we talk about processes and how the Baltic Sea strategy is implemented through processes, there are many steering groups established. Each policy area, for example, they have steering group consisting of all 8 member states coming together and saying, yes, this is our strategic direction, what we want to develop. There are working groups that were existing already before strategy came into force, but they are becoming more streamlined, more strategic. So this is also kind of change about coordination idea. And there are more and more coordinated actions among member states existing. So these are so-called processes. The EUSBSR flagship. First of all, I would like to mention that there is a label that we developed as Interact together with the Baltic Sea strategy stakeholders. And what is the flagship? Flagship is the result of policy discussion within a certain field. The flagship is the one expressing what policy area wish to achieve, where do they wish to develop to. In terms of structure, flagships can be flagship projects can be a single project or a group of projects. And here I would like to mention that if you look in the action plan under policy area agriculture, you will see that there is a project, flagship project called EFINORD, which is consisting of 8 individual projects implemented in 8 countries, just that they are very well coordinated together, and policy area coordinator is following how they develop and what changes should be introduced. The label of the flagship project actually can be given only by the policy area coordinator and horizontal action leader. And for that, any project developer needs to be in contact as soon as possible with the policy area coordinator to present the idea, to present it to all 8 member states, to discuss the idea, to develop, to apply, to find the best funding source to apply. The flagship project is the macro-regional project, so it needs to address some challenge at macro-regional level. It needs to bring something to achieve objectives set. Indicators and targets are set also in the Baltic Sea strategy. It is also important to mention that the flagship projects of the Baltic Sea strategy are linked with one or more actions within the policy area. So we have policy areas, then we have strategic actions, then we have projects implemented, and that all should be linked together. Then, why to become flagship project? What already Agnès mentioned just in her previous presentation, that we get less money, so we need to be more focused, more concrete, more to work for change. We cannot really waste money that we have, especially if we know that, yes, there are problems, challenges in the area that we need to address. And what does flagship project get? It is certainly linked to policymakers. It is promotion, visibility, recognition to your activities. It is also the link with other projects of the same or interlinked policy area, if I may so. For example, hazards are working very closely with policy area on agriculture, because there is very close link between these two. What I know in 2014-2020, there are more programs that are foreseeing specific calls for flagship projects, and they are also foreseeing additional criteria, giving additional points for strategic projects, for flagship projects. I don't talk only about Interreg programs, I talk about European Structural Investment Fund programs in more general meaning. What program gains? Because it should be win-win situation for program and for project. It's again this kind of recognition, more visibility. more sustainability of the results, more influence on territorial cohesion, more complementarities between different programs. Here I would like to mention that there is a project under policy area called education, where it is called Baltic Training Program. It was supported by Central Baltic Program. There is a part of the project, part of flagship project, supported by South Baltic Program, which is called South Baltic Training Program. So these two projects are working together. These are contributing to same or similar objectives. Let's look into the numbers. It is based on this brochure you have in your folders, KEEP. It is very fresh information. Since last week we have EUSBSR into KEEP. So you can search for flagship projects, parts of flagship projects, and linked projects. In total, we talk about around 500 projects linked with the Baltic Sea strategy, out of which 180 are flagships or parts of flagship projects. What we see as well that in the Baltic Sea strategy, as it is a longer process, it also needs mindset change. And anymore, we are not interested into projects that are very good projects, but only linked with the Baltic Sea strategy. We are interested into flagships, into these very concrete, very strategic projects. When we talk about the EUSBSR, not about programs, but about EUSBSR. So then, out of these projects, you see that 1/3 has been supported by Interreg and ETC programs. Why? Because cooperation is inbuilt into these programs. It's kind of easy to apply and to have a cooperation. It's not the same if you apply for national mainstream program or structural funds program at national level, because how you're going to build cooperation across with other countries. The other funding sources here are meant, Swedish Institute, for example, is supporting a lot the flagships, Nordic Council of Ministers, CBSS, Council of Baltic Sea States, HELCOM, national structural fund programs as well. Out of these 63 projects, you see that 34 are flagships and 29 are parts of flagship projects. Now, which programs to be mentioned here? You see that mainly it is Baltic Sea Region Program who has been supporting the implementation of the Baltic Sea strategy since it was endorsed, since it is in implementation stage. South Baltic has been supporting 5 flagship projects that we could identify. Central Baltic, 2 flagship projects that we could identify. This is very fresh data. If you see that something does not match really, please let us know. Please contact us. You have contact details in the brochure. You see that there are 2 weird programs for our area, Alpine and Central Europe. Why? It is linked that these programs were supporting transport corridor projects under policy area transport. And these corridors are crossing also the Baltic Sea region. One funny thing is what I realized when preparing these slides, when we were still early last week, preparing to launch the EUSBSR in KEEP, was that there is a Estonia, Latvia, Russia program. I'm coming from that program when I was working here in Latvia. And I know how it was discussed in the program and how careful program was about Russia. As Russia say, your internal EU macro-regional strategy. And they say that they don't want to really know much about it. They have their own strategy to develop, to implement. And now I see that one flagship is actually implemented under this program. It is about Lake Peipsi. It is implemented by Estonian Ministry of Interior in close cooperation with Russian partners. There are 10 partners in. I don't know if project partners know themselves that they are implementing flagship project. I don't know, but certainly there is a lot to do. They don't know, exactly, because program didn't know either. So there is a lot to do for us, for program, to promote implementation of the Baltic Sea strategy, and also to say that even if it's internal EU strategy, it is also benefiting non-EU countries. Here, just shortly, if you think about 4 themes of Interreg ETC programs, you see that there has been quite a number of flagships and parts of flagships supported under each of those. The topics are covering range from tourism, education, safety, environment, up to transport. So very many projects are implemented. I see that time is running, that's why I rush. What is the role of Interreg programs, and why Interreg programs, why not other programs supporting the Baltic Sea strategy? I was making this kind of very simple project life cycle. I put it on the slide. Then you think about different funding sources, because when we talk about the Baltic Sea strategy, we never talk about one particular fund, one particular funding source. We talk about any fund that is available in the region. It's just that you need to find, as project developer, the best matching your idea and supporting you in implementation. So you see, there is Interreg seed money facilities. We have very many, at least 5 in our region. There are European structural investment funds. There are wide EU programs. There can be any program mentioned. Also, private funds can be mentioned here. And for me, Interreg role is exactly at this very initiation stage, at very first stage when flagship is developed. In project development or in implementation of this first stage of flagship, because flagships can be really huge projects. Now, why Interreg and where Interreg is the best? It is certainly about, because cooperation is in a core of any Interreg program, to have cooperation, to implement cooperation, to network, to work together is something very natural for programs and for projects. Interreg programs are built to improve cross-border links. Interreg programs are very good, what we see in the flagships, that they are very good in testing, in developing new solutions, in developing pilot actions. They are also the very good ones and good example for other programs if you think about promoting results achieved. What is, I think, the key point on this slide is that Interreg programs are the ones who can and know how to teach to cooperate. Because it's so, more and more working with other funding sources, cooperation is so far somewhere there. It's so, with so much focus at national, regional level, especially with the structural fund programs, that cooperation is something like, wow, how can we do it? Then, another slide, may now say, kind of contradicting what I say. But no, what I want to say that we have, Interreg programs were designed to respond to local, to cross-border needs. Not all Interreg and ETC projects should be flagship projects. No, not at all. There are certain projects that are very important and that are the best to initiate through these programs, but not all. Again, what I said already, the Baltic Sea strategy is very concrete. There are certain policy areas, certain strategic actions, certain ideas behind. So it's not about whatever, although it seems so sometimes. We need to be selective with the flagship projects. And this is where I say that, yes, there are many good projects that are linked with the improvements in the region, but these are not flagship projects. It does not make their value less. No, it just says that they are designed and implemented for something else. And now the new programming period 2014-2020 is explicitly asking any EU program to find synergies, to find complementarities, to give a possibility to implement the EUSBSR as well as other macro-regional strategies. At the very end of my presentation, I would like to show you one video, which is about one flagship project implemented under horizontal action neighbors, which is about cooperation within the region and with our neighbors. If you are in Latvia, your neighbor is Belarus, your neighbor is Russia, your neighbor is Estonia and Lithuania. So from where you look, this is about neighbors. This project is funded by Swedish Institute. It is started in 2013. It is implemented by Council of the Baltic Sea States. They are also horizontal action leader for the, or co-leader, there are 2 leaders for this horizontal action. The project why did I select this video and not other one? First of all, because it's very dynamic. It's about youth, it's about entrepreneurship, it's about linking, networking, learning, building things together. It is also, for me, at least it seems, it gives very great opportunities for the projects developed under Baltic Lab flagship to apply to Central Baltic. Because Central Baltic specific objective 1.2 is about youth, more entrepreneurial youth. So it fits perfectly well also for this program. It also shows links between different funds. It also shows that flagship project can be started somewhere else, and then it can be implemented through other funding sources. What they say about themselves is that we believe that young creative minds in the Baltic Sea region can drive innovation and integration. And it is, since it's third year now in the implementation, they became kind of an innovation program. As I said, they are bringing together creative minds, creative young people with entrepreneurs to develop new projects. During the first year, they developed 8 projects. You can read a lot about the Baltic Lab. They are excellent in communicating what they did on their website. But they developed projects, Mindmill, Baltic Design Ship, Project Little Brother, and Social Innovation Baltic. Last year, they, under the program for 2014, they developed even more projects, but what they say, they were too ambitious. Because actually just 2 other projects flourished into applying for further funds, one from Nordic Council of Ministers, another one from CBSS, their own funding. So now I think it is the time for video, and as I said, if you are interested to know more, please check Baltic Lab.
I think the aspect that is so fantastic with Baltic Lab is just the vibe. You really come here, you feel it, and it's crazy and different every time. At Baltic Lab we have 7 countries this year. What we're doing here is creating a network. We're creating a national network, we're creating a regional network.
Baltic Lab is not only the networking weekend, it's also people building connections to each other, starting businesses, learning from each other's mistakes, each other's successes.
It's a fantastic way of getting involved and getting engaged and having a stake in your own history.
It's a wonderful opportunity to meet people that are like-minded from my age range.
I want to see the Baltic Sea region as the new, cool, hip, innovative and fun place to be.
And that's especially in this region something that so many generations before never had. You were never asked to participate in creating your future.
The feeling, the atmosphere of this event is in this sense unique. I mean, you have close to 100 people just buzzing of interest for the Baltic Sea region and Baltic Sea region issues.
And the future that promises most is entrepreneurship.
And creativity. The two together is the winning horse.
What I'm taking home from here are a lot of good ideas, a lot of great memories, and definitely a good vision for the future.
Seeing other people, what they've done with their lives, it's inspiring, so it means that I can do something as well. And you have this wonderful opportunity to just really focus on conversation and getting to know each other and getting to know the cultures.
From this event, I can take to me, for myself, more self-confident. That I'm proud actually now that I'm from the Baltic Sea region.
Being here, being with all these different nationalities and meeting people that are exactly like me, I felt a belonging. And that is something that I think you all should embrace.
Nobody leaves unchanged. Everybody will be changed. This is really the beginning of something very big.
Baltic Lab is a major undertaking. It's a major project, it's important for the region, and it should have been done earlier.
We love it here.
So by this video, let me finish my presentation. The short one, maybe a bit hectic. Sorry for that. You are welcome to ask questions. Let me also to say that the Baltic Sea strategy is concrete. It's not about whatever, although we hear this comment all over. We are also focusing more and more the same like any program in this new funding period. The Baltic Sea strategy is commonly agreed. It's not somebody else's responsibility to face challenge, to deal with challenge in this region. It is all of us involved. There is a very strong role for Interreg programs, but these programs are not only funding sources, especially if you think about real investments. What I also want to say that the strength of these programs, of Interreg ETC programs, is exactly in boosting cooperation, in letting it go, letting it start. And on behalf of the ones working with the Baltic Sea strategy, I wish you to consider maybe to develop good, great flagship project. Yes, it is a long process, but it brings the value and it brings the change that we all work for. So thank you. No, it doesn't change. Let's move it that way. The last slide is thank you slide to all of you. Thanks. If any questions. I'm still here the whole day, so please. I also take questions in Latvian if you don't feel up to ask in English now. Yes, please.
A second.
I can give my mic.
Yes, Petrund from Estonia Latvia program. I have a question. How many people work full-time for the strategy team, and how many at least half of their time?
In
at
where?
the moment?
In where?
Anyway, globally.
So we have, I never counted, honestly. I think if you open the EUSBSR website and contact details, as about the governance structure, national coordinators, policy area coordinators, horizontal action leaders, we talk about 60 people, but we don't talk about full-time employed ones. What I also say that the Baltic Sea strategy needs continuous support, recognition, because some people, some policy area coordinators, they really say, what can I do if I work 10% of my time on these issues? The Baltic Sea strategy is not that well recognized still, even if we started back in 2009. It's not that well recognized, especially in line ministries at national level. If you ask around, like I did, how many of you have heard, how many of you are familiar with the Baltic Sea strategy? It's not that many. And I don't know, but something should be done not only by one stakeholder or by one actor somewhere, but it should be done jointly and together. In our office in Interact Point Turku, it is one of our 4 offices across Europe. I'm the only one full-time employed for the Baltic Sea strategy, and I will not be anymore, or I'm not anymore, because we get this new task, new request from our 28 member states to work across strategies, to exchange all these kind of good flagship ideas, good flagship projects with other macro-regional strategies. Because Danube, yes, they are running since 2010, but Adriatic Ionian is just starting, and sometimes they are lost and they don't know even from where to start. So we try to exchange, but I don't know how many are working all in all. There are people involved, there are people contributing, there are policy area coordinators doing these things, but not full-time, really, unfortunately.
I just want to thank you all. I'm Helen Bollman from the Swedish Institute. We also have funding possibilities. I will be all the day here, so you can ask me questions. I just wanted to add something that people are forgetting. I mean, all the projects that it started should be started with issues that you should work with anyway. I mean, it's no fantasy things. It's things that needs to be done in a municipality or in a region or in a national level. That's really important to put in mind. Also, that is often forgot, is that there is a transnational possibility in the regional funding program and in the social fund. So that's also important to remember. You can add countries that is not European Union members, in the transnational cooperation. So that's important. Have a look into that as well. Thank you. Thank you.
Maybe what I can add there is that soon, by the end of June, we will publish one of our studies where we looked into 18 different European Structural Investment Fund programs. We looked for what possibilities for the Baltic Sea strategy implementation are there. And we will publish the findings of that study soon. We hope before annual forum of the Baltic Sea strategy, which is just now, soon, 15th, 16th of June in Jūrmala, here in Latvia. But yeah, it's maybe still things there are to be done.
Any more questions? If that's all for now, then thank you, Baiba. Before we break for coffee, let me mention that during the whole day, including the coffee breaks, you have, as Helen Bollman already said, the Swedish Institute here sharing information about the seed funding opportunities. We have also 3 neighboring programs here with their stands: Estonia, Latvia, Latvia, Lithuania, and South Baltic. So if you go out from this room on your right, you will find many stands. And we also have, the Central Baltic program has national contact points in each member state, and they are all represented here today. So if you want to ask anything, just meet us, meet our colleagues, then you're very welcome. And the coffee break will be served at the restaurant, so if you go out from this room, then just to the left. And we will come back in 23 minutes, so 10 past 11.
Europeans are just no good at cooperation. Everybody knows we can't really get along. All those different cultures and languages. I mean, I'd love to be proved wrong, but... Okay, sure, a few bridges have been built, but is there anything today that goes beyond basic things like trade? I don't think so. What's going on here? The river is flooding, and a watchman is alerting officials in the neighbouring country. A shared surveillance system to prevent flood catastrophes, and authorities from both countries helping. Impressive. But what about the employment situation? Oh, they've built a connection, so people can cross the border more easily. Look at that! They've transformed the old factory into a hub. Shared spaces that help entrepreneurs get started. Actually, I have a few project ideas of my own. Maybe I could join them. How about this old fellow? Old and ill. Looks like he's got something chronic, but he's in no state to travel to the doctor every day. Looks like his doctor is meeting up with medical experts from other European regions who have developed a telemedicine system. Wow! Now doctors can get the latest information about their patients, and patients can get medical advice from the comfort of their homes. And it was all made possible by sharing ideas and experiences through European cooperation projects. Okay, I'm convinced. Cooperation across borders is definitely the way to go. Real projects like these are happening across Europe and beyond. Learn more about how European cooperation is improving lives in your area. Join in and celebrate European Cooperation Day.